Wonderful, wonderful. Good to see folks joining from all over. Well, we will go ahead and get going here. My name is Jennifer Madrand, and I serve as the Outreach Manager at Churches for Middle East Peace. And thank you for joining us today for a webinar discussion hosted by Churches for Middle East Peace on the recent publication of Is Peace Possible? Palestinians Speak, with representatives from the Assembly of Catholic Ordinaries of the Holy Land and CMEP board member communions, and moderated by Julie Schumacher Cohen. Churches for Middle East Peace is a coalition of 30 national church communions and organizations working to encourage U.S. policies that actively promote just, lasting, and comprehensive resolutions to conflicts in the Middle East. CMEP helps church organizations, leaders, and individuals nationwide advocate in a knowledgeable, timely, holistic, and effective way to express their concerns about justice and peace for all of the people in the Middle East. And I just want to mention today, amid a devastating war against the Ukraine, much of our attention and prayer is rightfully devoted to the crisis in that part of the world. Nonetheless, I am grateful that you all have chosen to join us today and further your learning on the question of peace in the Holy Land, which is just as important as ever. So thank you. Before we begin, I'm going to give just a brief tutorial on how we'll be using Zoom today. Since we are using Zoom in the webinar format, you will only be able to see the videos of those who are panelists for our discussion. And at the end of our time, there will be some time for question and answer, at which point you can submit your questions using the Q&A function, which appears on the bottom bar of your Zoom screen. You can enter your question there. If you have questions that arise earlier on in the webinar, please feel free to add them to that Q&A section before those questions run away from you, and we'll be sure to address those during that part devoted at the end of our time together. I will now go ahead and introduce our moderator for today. Julie Schumacher Cohen is a former Deputy Director of Churches for Middle East Peace, former Senior Fellow at the Telos Group, current member of the CMEP Catholic Advisory Council, Assistant Vice President in Community Engagement and Government Affairs at the University of Scranton, and PhD student in Political Science at Temple University. Thank you, Julie, for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you also for keeping us in mind of the suffering that's taking place in Ukraine, but also, as we heard from Pope Francis, that this is a continued time to keep in mind places all over the world that continue to experience violence and conflict. So we've come today to talk about, of course, Israel-Palestine. I want to thank Churches for Middle East Peace for hosting today's webinar. It's really my pleasure and honor to be here today as a member of CMEP's Catholic Advisory Council. And for those who may not be aware, the Catholic Advisory Council was recently formed as a group of clergy and members of religious orders, academics, and advocates who work in support of political and socioeconomic conditions to enable the presence and permanence of Christians in the Holy Land, and to engage in advocacy and education among American Catholics to promote U.S. policies toward a just and lasting peace. So our council was really glad to be part of organizing today's event to focus on a new book that I think is a really important reference and resource for American Catholics. I have my well-worn copy here. And also I think as an ecumenical resource, the book Is Peace Possible in the Holy Land? Palestinians Speak, discusses Palestinian Christians' struggle to persist amid occupation and the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and to find a way forward. I want to give a special thanks to Jeff Aboud, who is also a fellow member of the Catholic Advisory Council, and he was responsible for getting the book released in the United States and served as its editor. Is Peace Possible is written by members of the Justice and Peace Commission of the Assembly of Catholic Ordinaries of the Holy Land, and that assembly was established at the initiative of the Apostolic Delegate in Jerusalem and is comprised of the Catholic Ordinaries of the various rites who have jurisdiction over the Holy Land. And so, as we'll explore today with our panelists, I think the book is a really helpful guide for anyone seeking to learn more about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and especially to better understand Palestinian Christian perspectives and experience in the land where Jesus was born, died, and rose again. And I think it's especially timely this week as the Lenten journey has either just begun or is about to begin for Christians across traditions and across the world. It's also especially meaningful for me as someone who has both Israeli Jewish family background, was raised Christian myself, and was especially inspired to peace efforts and to the work that I've done in my career by the work of Palestinian Christians and especially of Palestinian Catholics. The book also contains a collection of articles from the Catholic Church in Jerusalem, including from the former Latin Patriarch Michel Sabah, as well as position papers written to help the Church promote peace and justice in the region. One reviewer said, finally, an authoritative answers for those who have wondered where the Catholic Church stands on the situation in the Holy Land and its Christians. So today we'll have a chance to hear from two panelists who will provide some opening and respondent comments. And then as we heard from Jennifer, I'm going to be able to open things up and have a discussion, and you can use the Q&A tool to do that at any time, but especially once we begin the Q&A period. So let me introduce now our two panelists. So first, Yusuf Daher is a Jerusalem-born Palestinian Christian. He is the Secretary of the Justice and Peace Commission of the Assembly of Catholic Ordinaries in the Holy Land. Presently, he is the coordinator of the Jerusalem Liaison Office of the World Council of Churches. Yusuf has served on media teams for papal visits to the Holy Land. He has co-authored many papers on Palestinian Christians in Jerusalem, managed communications in the fields of tourism, ecumenism, and advocacy. He's also a licensed travel and tourism and pilgrimage expert. And I think one of the things we'll find as we go through the book discussion today is that this is a wonderful resource as you consider making a pilgrimage to the Holy Lands. Following Yusuf's comments, we'll hear from Father James Gardner, S.A., who is a Bronx, New York-born Franciscan Friar of the Atonement. He professed in 1960 and was ordained in 1969. And for the past several years, he's been managing special projects at the Franciscan Monastery of the Holy Land in Washington, D.C. And Father Gardner is also a fellow member of CMEP's Catholic Advisory Council, and it's been a pleasure to get to know him in that capacity. So, Yusuf, I will turn things over to you for opening comments.
Thank you, Julie, and good morning to our brothers and sisters in the US, and good afternoon and good evening to the rest of the world and in the Middle East. Yes, this book does answer the question. I think it's a work of 10 years of the Justice and Peace Commission, which was established in 1971. We consider the Justice and Peace Commission as the think tank of the Catholic Church in the Holy Land to monitor discrimination, inequality, justice, and peace issues, and the community and the church well-being in the Holy Land. So for the past 10 years, I have worked with the Commission as the secretary. I live in Jerusalem. I was brought in Jerusalem. I have family in Jerusalem. And I have worked for more than 25 years with His Beatitude Patriarch Michel Sabah. I was privileged also to work on the commission with Father David Neuhaus and Father Franz Bowen, for some of you who knows them from Jerusalem. The book was written, as we said, and as Julie described, by and co-authored actually between us, members of the commission. At some moment, we thought that this book is necessary to ask these questions that we were facing and we were analyzing during our mandate in monitoring discrimination and inequality in the Holy Land. And we have presented the book in two parts. First part, which is informatory and to give information about Palestinian Christians, which is a big question to many people in the world, especially Christians, who some or many of them do not know Palestinian Christians, do not know that we exist, do not know what is Palestinian Christian and from where they are. So the first part gives this description: who are Palestinian Christians, and as Palestinians ourselves as the indigenous people of the Holy Land. We lived here a long time ago. Some would say that we lived even before Jesus Christ was here, because we are the grandchildren of the mixed cultures that were living in this area between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. And then we gave more details into the Christians living in Jerusalem, in Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, and diaspora, and inside Israel, because Christians in these areas, they face different challenges and they live differently. The people in Jerusalem today, they are around 9,000, maybe a little bit less. In Gaza, they are not more than 1,100 living among 2 million within this area that some of us would call a closed prison. In the West Bank, they are about 40 to 42,000. Inside Israel, we are 130,000 among a population of over 8 million Israelis. In the diaspora, around 500,000. That means the Palestinians are living in the diaspora are more than the Palestinians living today in historical Palestine, in the area between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. So in this part of the book, the first part, where we give all this information to know about Palestinian Christians, wherever they are. And then we, in the second part, we have included our statements, the statements that we came out with during the past 10 years. The most important is starting by 2016, where we were faced by the question, is peace possible? And why peace is not, why until now it was not possible? And if some of you would remember 2018, we came right after a period where we know this period to be named as the stabbing period, where many of young Palestinians went into the streets against armed Israeli personnel, policewomen, policemen, a station guard, or here and there, or an army personnel, and tried to stab them with knives. And this was repeated many times. I remember that at one stage, we saw this at a neighboring later. So this drew our questions, big questions for us. Why this people is so desperate now to go and commit this suicidal act? Because they know that they will not reach these guards. These guards, they have guns. And why these people do not have any hope? So this is where we started our analytical work, which is presented in this book, especially in the second chapter, where you find many segments and many chapters analyzing the situation. But I will stop at certain stations in this part of the book. For example, the statement that says the present conflict, the 2016 statement, where it is completely analytical. And maybe would start by saying that maybe at this part international law and international legitimacy did not give justice and did not give peace for so many years, for 70 years. We saw that negotiations and negotiating peace between Israelis and Palestinians for the past 25 years did not bring us peace. It brought us, after all, this separation war. All the international community and the UN resolutions did not bring us peace. Armed struggle did not bring us peace. Terrorism did not bring us peace. Non-violence even did not bring us peace. So these were very huge questions in front of us. Why? What is wrong? What's wrong with this conflict that whatever we tried, both sides, with and without the international community, we could not reach peace. Which came up by this commission, by this small group, by this think tank, and we called it the New Vision. It was a statement in 2016. And here, we at least tried to speak to Israelis and to Palestinians. And I remember right after we wrote that statement, we started meeting Israelis and Palestinians. especially politicians. I remember we met a parliament member from the Israeli government, from the Shas movement, and the Arab League chairperson, Mr. Ayman Aoudi. We started, communicating and discussing and a dialogue to reach out some answers how peace is possible. And I think that in 2016 there was this small root of the answer that came out. We saw that the problem is that there was no justice given in the international and international community and international legitimacy to the Palestine-Israel issue. And we thought that God, who is our creator and who created us as children, as equals, may think that this solution and this conflict should be solved in another way. And this is where we continued thinking that equality is the key word. The people living on this land should be equal. They should feel equal in dignity and equal in their rights. And this is where the solution lies, that equality will bring justice and justice will bring peace. So this division between the two peoples and the divisions between the same people sometimes, like in Gaza, Ramallah thing today, it will not bring peace, because this is separating people. The wall was separating the people from each other. And we know that better relations is when you face each other, when you know each other. So this is where these values came into the answer. But after all, we were faced immediately in 2018 with the national state law of Israel that was being prepared in the Knesset and that was recently adopted in the first reading. It is not yet adopted in Israel as a law, but they have prepared this law, and this law is very discriminatory against non-Jews. We could see that Israel still thinks that they can have a democratic state which is Jewish, that gives Jewish people the upper hand, the right of self-determination against the others, and in the midst of the others, they are the only people who have the right to exist on this land and who have the right for self-determination. Hebrew is the official language of the state, and at the same time, they think they can treat everybody as equal citizens. This was also wrong, and there is a chapter analyzing how we saw the national state law of Israel. So this brought us back to the equality and discrimination versus each other, which was pretty much the center of our focus and our dialogue and our discussions. And from there, we brought out another piece responding to the national state law. But at the end, we presented our new vision to many people around us, and we thought that there is some welcoming there. Maybe it's not the right time, maybe it's not still the right time, but we thought that this is the only solution to answer the question we have of the book. Is peace possible? And here I would like to quote what we wrote on the Nationality State Law chapter, which for me and for our commission, I think, is the answer how the church would see a solution. The church believes that a solution is possible. It is not, however, the task of the church to determine the concrete details of the solution. The church maintains that any legitimate solution needs to ensure 5 things. In justice for all people in the Holy Land today, equality for all its citizens, freedom for all individuals, including complete religious freedom, mutual respect that ensures that all find their place within society, and respect for international law. Although we thought that international law was the major problem, But this is the law that at least everybody on this planet abides to. So we thought that these 5 parameters can guarantee a possibility of peace. And after, writing all these statements, at the end, what was very inspiring for us is that the church adopted this vision without giving any political parameters, because this is where we will lose the focus and the compass. If we give it political parameters, then we become more political commission or political church. And this is how the church have said it. The church does not have the responsibility to determine the details of the solution, but it gives the solution. It gives a vision for a solution. And this is where in 2019, which was, I think, the crown of this work and this book, where the church have seen and adopted the voice of the church and the children as a community. And they said in page 124, and it is almost signed by the Catholic Ordinaries of the Holy Land, it says equality. Whatever political solutions might be adopted is a fundamental condition for a just and lasting peace. So this equality, as I say, this is the magic word. We have lived together in this land in the past. Why should we not live together in the future too? Yes, that's true. We lived all through many occupations, not only the Israeli occupation, the Ottoman occupation, back to the Roman occupation, to the Persian. And most of these, we live together as a people of the land. And the Palestinians are the people of the land. The Israelis of this land who were here on this land, they are people of this land. We live together as Jews, Muslims, and Christians, and Druze, and others for so many years, for so many centuries here, peaceful. Even today, if we walk each other in front of the old city, we look at each other as human beings. We don't look at each other as enemies until we see somebody who is armed, who is trying to hit on my dignity. So this is our vision for Jerusalem and the whole land called Israel and Palestine, between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. And I would close by this to make more discussion and more possibility for questions maybe, because I'm sure that many of you would like to know more about this. And as myself, Yusuf Daher, and the Office of the World Council of Churches, my mandate is to give information and to explain and interpret things for many people who are interested in justice and peace, not only as the Commission, but also as a WCC staff in Jerusalem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. That gives us a lot to start to think about and to ask questions. And I especially, I'm glad that you focused in on the nation state law, which I think is a very important and really terrible development over the last few years. So now I'm going to invite Father Gardner to offer some comments in response, and then we'll come all back together to have the Q&A time. Father Gardner.
Well, hello to everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to be there. I want to say thank you too for this marvelous resource, the book. I think that we really need to promote that book. I think it needs to be read and it needs to be discussed. I mean, it's a very, very helpful thing. One of the things that comes to my mind is when I hate questions about peace, questions about, is it possible? I mean, I go back to, I think of the scriptures where Jesus tells the disciples, peace I leave you, my peace I give you. John remembers Jesus saying that, but he adds, not as the world gives, do I give it to you. That's the rub. And so sometimes I think our own efforts at peace can be a real, maybe we have too many fixed notions about what peace actually is, what it actually looks like, when in point of fact, it's a gift. Gifts, unfortunately, can be rejected Or, I mean, as we see, like it's all every place in the globe, it seems to me, the gift of peace is I don't know why we are, I shouldn't say, I don't want to say people, I don't know why we are so afraid of peace. But anyway, I just want to think that's my contribution to this is the way I look at things. I think a second thing I want to say is that I think we all need to get busy and promote the reading and the distribution and the reading of this incredible work. That's it for now.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to open up for questions. I see already that we have a beginning question. I think it's a very useful one to maybe start the Q&A period off. So the question is, do you feel that the two-state solution is still possible or still part of that vision? So whoever wants to take that first. Yusuf, maybe you already started to answer it, but if you want to share it with the audience.
Yeah, well, I'll talk personally because I cannot talk on behalf of the Commission, but I'll talk personally. I think that after trying 25 years to negotiate a two-state solution, after PLO resolutions and Israeli Knesset laws, we don't see a two-state solution that is possible, and we don't see that the two-state solution that was proposed guarantees any equality between the two peoples or any justice. Because, you are talking about people that should take 22% of historical land and say, this is peace. Okay, you take this part and you give me peace. But while taking this part of 22%, I'm still building settlements inside this 22%. 100,000 settlers before the peace negotiations. Today, they are 800,000. Today, these 800,000, they have children who are born in these settlements. And to take them out today, this will be another disaster, another human disaster, right? So we have gone into the non-returnable stage where you cannot retract again. We are so combined together. We are so interacted in geography and in demography in this land. The only solution is to open up and say that on this land, we have 6.5 million Arabs, Palestinians, and 6.5 Israeli Jews. Today, they should live together in peace and establish whatever you name it, establish one democratic political entity where everybody is. Sometimes we joke between each other. If this is possible, and the settlers can stay wherever they want, and I can recall my mother's house in Haifa, or at least get compensated to buy another house for my children in Jerusalem who are living today in Jerusalem, then there are many solutions. And if the Israeli Jewish community would say, well, we are afraid to become a minority in 10, 20, 30 years. So we used to joke and say, okay, then we'll give you the Lebanese model. We have a democracy, and the prime minister should be always a Jew. And the president should be always a Muslim, and the parliament president should be always a Christian who will tell you you are brothers and sisters, and the Muslim with his and her hospitality, while the Israeli Jewish prime minister will do a better job, as we see in Israel. Because I will tell you, Palestinians look up to the Israeli government and look up to the Israeli democracy, but they know that this democracy is only for Jewish people, is only for Israelis, and they see that they are doing a great job running a state. So we used to joke about it. No, two-state solution did not work, neither by armed struggle, neither by non-violence, neither by negotiations. So it's a no-go. Neither party is really interested in this. What we have today is we have a status quo that is good for some people who are being leaders on their people. Do they really care for their people? This is the question. This status quo is good for certain leaderships, but is not good for the people and for the better future for my children and my grandchildren.
Mhm. Father Garden, did you want to add anything to that?
I mean, the other thing I want to that I would want to add is something that I think the need to hear Palestinian voices. I think the need to hear, and which is what we're doing here. And I that's what I really appreciate hearing. I don't think we have the opportunity to hear them enough. And I think that we have to kind of even the playing field so that we can, at least here in the United States, I don't think we hear Palestinian voices enough, or what we hear are caricatures. So I think that I have a particular interest in hearing. I believe that the Spirit says things to the church, and it says things through people's experiences. I want to know, what is the Spirit saying to the church through the experiences of Palestinian people?
That's very important. And I think even when we just think about that question of yes or no, or how the two-state solution, in many ways, that I think that's a very, we are very concerned about that as Americans. And for many years, and analysts have said, are we past it? Are we before it? Is it too late? Is it, but I think what's very helpful, and you read from it, Yusuf, was that assertion about needing equality to be at the heart of any political solution. And those 5, kind of principles that maybe the church is not going to specifically lay out the exact political solution, but that we need these 5 principles to guide us, and that equality is at the heart of that. So I think that's very important. Let's see here. I think we have, so we can take more questions, but I can also offer one, because we didn't talk so much about this quite yet, and I think it's important. It's specifically about East Jerusalem. There's been so many things happening in East Jerusalem. We know, of course, that it was really the spark of what happened last spring with the violence between Israel and Hamas and Gaza. We hear all the time, or those of us who are following, about home demolitions, and then even more recently, this threat of a plan in the Mount of Olives as a national park by the state of Israel and settler groups. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that, and specifically the experience of Palestinian Christians in East Jerusalem.
Yeah, actually, what's new about this is that the heads of churches have outspoken in a very strong manner to these claims and to these allegations by the Israelis. They have issued a statement on 13th of December asking for no more violence in East Jerusalem, and to preserve a Christian identity in East Jerusalem, because they are afraid that there are some acts by the authorities against a Christian identity, which is part of the multi-faithful identity and multicultural identity of Jerusalem. And then afterwards, they discovered that there was a plan to confiscate some lands around the old city. And we are talking about the Garden of the Gethsemane. It's a beautiful garden, beautiful valley between the Gethsemane and the walls of the old city, all around it, touching some Orthodox also, Franciscan, of course, mainly, and the Armenian quarters, besides some Palestinian neighborhoods, just to take these lands and put them within a package of the national park authorities. So when they discovered this, without any communication between the authorities and the church leadership, and this has been the trend lately, especially in Jerusalem, by the municipality and some of the Israeli authority organizations in and around the city. I think personally, this is the free hand that Trump gave when he acknowledged and he recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Since then, we have seen that the authorities are playing and trying to act inside and in around East Jerusalem in a totally different manner. They don't want any gatherings for Muslims or Christians. They limited access to holy sites by the Muslims and the Christians. And we are not talking about the Jerusalem Christians by itself, but about West Bank Christians and West Bank Muslims who find it very difficult to access their cities during their holidays. We cannot enjoy holidays. You saw 2 days ago at the Damascus Gate. They were enjoying and gathering around Damascus Gate after celebrating Isra and Mi'raj. They had to hit on them, arrested a few girls. One girl was hit by the head by one of these grenades. This morning, their chief of police was reprimanded by the government, saying this is too much. So they have this free hand on Jerusalem. They want to, hijack Jerusalem into a Jewish capital for Israel. And I think Trump had a lot to do in this. But today, I think the heads of churches just had it. And they are saying this enough is enough. These radical groups and this radicalism within the state and within the people is playing also through the authority and the system itself. They know that they cannot name certain Jewish leaders inside the government, but they are sure, the heads of churches, that these radical groups are persuading, or they have their own members within the government, within the government system, to tackle these things that they cannot manage to take them by court or by manipulating here and there. And we remember the Jaffa Gate hotels they tried to take from the church leadership.
Yes, Yusuf, on a personal note, I stayed in the Imperial Hotel as a college student 20 years ago. It was a beautiful spot to be as a student, but yes, I lament that it always is being trying to be seized. So thank you. Father Gardner, do you want to share anything on? Okay, so we have a question in the chat, how to deal with the fact that Israel considers itself to be a Jewish state.
In the chat? Sorry.
Yes, I mean, we can answer it here. It just comes from one of our, from Margaret McKelvey. How to deal with the fact that,
again?
Yes, how to deal with the fact that Israel considers itself to be a Jewish state. And I know the book does talk a little bit about this, but yes, it's a big question.
As one of our leaders used to say, you can consider the state whatever you want. As a Jew, you can consider it a Jewish state. And as a Christian, I can consider it's a state for Christianity also, and a Muslim. And this is what we mean. I want to feel that this state is my state, as a Palestinian, as an Israeli, as a Christian, or as a Muslim, or as a Jew. The state should be the state for the people. A Jewish state, I have never, we never heard that this state is Jewish or Muslim or Christian. Why should the state be so religious or acting as religion is for the people, not for this political entity. So the state should be Jewish for the Jewish people, because it will treat them decently as Jewish people. That means it is considerate to their religion and beliefs. And the same state should be also Christian and should be also considered to Christianity and to Islam and to others and to non-believers. This is what we are asking. So if Israel wants to consider itself as a Jewish state, you cannot say you are a democratic state. You cannot say everybody is equal under this state. No, the national state law states that only Jewish people have self-determination. Then you cannot have it be. This is what we say to the Israelis who want a Jewish state and say it's democratic. You cannot have it be. It does not, the equation does not, the physics does not go through.
Thank you for that. That again, bringing us back to that question of equal status before the state, before the democracy. I wanted to ask a question. You speak a lot, it's in the book a lot, about how Palestinian Christians are not sort of simply caught in the middle of the conflict, that they are really part and parcel and of the Palestinian people. And then also that the Catholic Church still has this unique role of mission of peace and justice in the world. So maybe if you can talk about those two things, and Father Gardner also, if you want to comment on the second part of the question.
Yes, Palestinian Christians, they are part and parcel. As we said, they are the people of the land. If they are Christian by religion, they are neighbors of the Muslims, and they are really neighbors. They are facing the same challenges. Inside Israel, their neighbor might be a Jewish, and they face the same challenges in Haifa, in Jaffa, in here and there. There are certain places where there are only exclusive Jewish communities and Arab communities, and this is different. But throughout history, especially let us say since the Ottomans, Palestinian people of this land, let's say Christians or Muslims or Jews, were fighting the Ottomans at the end of the 100 years. During Israel, we fought together as Christians and Muslims. This kind of occupation, this kind of the new state, the 1948 war, so we fought it together, even not only but the Palestinians, but Jordanians and Iraqis and so on at that time. Palestinian Christians have led the armed struggle. Palestinian Christians were the first to hijack planes at that time. George Habash is a Palestinian Christian, PFLP. So these are Palestinian who led they are pillars of the revolution. And at the end, they became the non-violent leaders, especially after the second intifada, where it was a militarized intifada. The Palestinian Christians did not see a role there. This is where they separated themselves a little bit. They saw this is a stupid way of fighting the occupation. As one of our leaders said, if you want to challenge Tyson, the boxer, you don't challenge him in a boxing match. You challenge him in a chess match. So you are so weak, you cannot go and face Israel militarily-wise, like in the second intifada. This is where Palestinian Christians chose the non-violent means to end this occupation and to have a solution. And since then, we have gone on this track. And in 2019, many of you would recognize the voice of the Palestinian Christians in the Kairos Palestine document. So these are the Christians. They are part of parcel of the society where they are living in. The church have served the whole society. The Christian churches, schools are open inside Israel and inside the West Bank, serving the public, serving the community. There is no exclusivity for serving this or that, or blocking this in front of certain people. We are open, our hospitals are open, our churches are open, and our hospitals and all non-governmental organizations run by the church and church-related organizations. So this is our land, as much as it is the land of the Jewish people, the Muslims, and others who even non-believers who want to stay here and who were born here.
Father Gardner, did you want to add anything to that?
One of the things that crosses my mind is that we don't know our own traditions well. You know, if we knew our own traditions better, all of us, I mean, we would be more welcoming, more open to other people. The other thing that crosses my mind is I want to be careful that our role as outsiders, like in other words, it would be very easy for us here in the U.S. to come up with a solution to the problems as we define them and see them over there. I'm not so sure how valid those solutions would be. I think we can ask questions. The other thing is I think that we can all learn stuff. I think that both the problems, the situations, and the attempts at resolving them, if we're learners, we can make a lot more, advance much more greatly on a path to peace.
Thank you. There's another question now in the Q&A from Daryl. He's saying, are there Israelis, individuals, and groups working to implement the solution of the book? Is peace possible?
Yes, thank you, Daryl. There are certain Israelis, we are talking about intellectual Israelis, who look at the solutions the same way we look. The same, maybe they did not read the book, but they are pretty much saying the same thing. And I'll give you one name, this famous Haaretz writer, Gideon Levy, who says, in other words, that this is the only vision. We have tried the negotiations. He names himself that I was stupid enough to go for this big lie of the Oslo agreement. And I thought that peace was possible at that time. It's the same thing happened to me. We were ready to give up the lands of my mother and my grandparents in Shu'amar and Haifa to have peace in Jerusalem. And he thought that the same thing was happening. But at the end, he realized that international community and international legislation and all these negotiations, the basis of these did not give justice because there was the lack of this equality. And at the end, he says that whoever supports the two-state solution is against a solution today, and who is supporting the prolonging of the agony and the conflict. We should no more think of the two-state. This is what they said, and I'm hearing that more and more people are looking into this vision. And sometimes you can hear Israelis talking about the one-state solution, but with different political parameters. There are the late Yossi Benin thought about a confederation where everybody is equal. We are interacting and open areas between each other. The settlers will still be Israeli citizens, but living inside Palestine, and there are Palestinians living inside Israel. He had this other formula. Everybody is looking for a formula. But I tell you, the key word is equality. If everybody on this land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea are treated equal by the state, choosing and self-determining this kind of political entity, we will stay in peace. There will be one only question. Then the capital question will be solved. The settlement question, they will say whatever they are. The compensation of the lands that we lost as Palestinians will bring the other question, the compensation of the Jewish people who lost their properties in Baghdad, in Iraq, in Morocco, and so on. So it's the same pot. It's the same financial pot. This is solved. The only question that we will have to solve is the refugee problem. And sometimes some people, some intellectuals would think, and personally, I found that the best way to solve this problem is to bring these 400,000 refugees who are sitting in Beirut camps, who are stateless, who does not have ID cards, who cannot work properly. These are stateless people. Let's not bring we are not talking about all Palestinian refugees, 10 million people who are coming. No, they are not coming. They are Canadian today, they are Australian, they are Chilean. But these 400 in Beirut, they are stateless. They don't have a Lebanese citizenship. They don't have any other citizenship. Let's bring them in. Put them in settlements, new settlements, build them new settlements near the villages that were destroyed in 1948. This will bring reconciliation. We accept 1 million Russian refugees. We accept the Ethiopians. We accept them all today. Let them be here. Let them consider this home. But bring these 400 poor people in order to have citizenship in this new entity. This will bring reconciliation. This will bring justice. I want to comment on Father James. He brought a very important issue. Learning and education. We did not educate our children. They did not educate their children well. And this is where we don't know each other. I was brought up in a Christian French Catholic school. Of course, the Catholic school there does not have the mandate to put the curriculum in our hands, except the curriculum that is being given by the government. And in that time, it was Jordan, and then Palestinian, and then nobody had to interfere. Now it's Israeli. In these books, we don't teach our children the origins of the other. I thought that the Israelis came by boat after Hitler. This is what when I started learning, Abuna James, when I started learning, I saw that Jewish people were more in population in Jerusalem than Christians at certain eras. Then you realize that when these people are asking for a home in this land, they have some right in doing so. They did not come to steal the land from both from Europe. So the same thing with the Israelis. They should know who are the Christians of today. Maybe they were the Jews of yesterday. And the Muslims were Christians, converted sometimes to Christianity during the Ottomans, and the Muslims. And we are all coming from different cultures and different peoples in this land. We are so mixed in blood that one used to say that I might have more blood of King David than Netanyahu himself.
That is such an important insight, Yusuf, for all of us in terms of the learning, and also as you just took us through your own journey of learning, and I really appreciate that, and thank you for that. There's a lot of wisdom there. I think we may have time. Let's see here. We have another question in the chat from Abigail. Why do you think the Catholic Church has been less outspoken and specifically critical of Israeli policies than other Christian denominations? Is there a hesitancy because of the historical issues between the Jewish community and the Catholic Church? And maybe this goes to the point of maybe we didn't get to it before, sort of the mission of the Catholic Church of peace and justice, which it tries to, I think, lay out in the book. And so either of you can take that question, or both.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't speak on behalf of the Catholic Church, but as we say,
I don't either.
it's a huge church, and sometimes when you have this huge structure, sometimes it moves slowly, and I think that the Catholic Church in the Holy Land is not as free to speak up, because there is the Vatican, there is policies, there is long history, and there is all these dealings inside the state that sometimes Israel controls the life of everybody, even the church, even the people and the staff, permits to get staff to their work and so on. So sometimes they do not, and to tell you the truth, the church have been very careful, not only the Catholic Church, but all the churches have been very diplomatic with the Israelis, have been very diplomatic with any other issue that is political. They try to be a little bit away of politics. But at the crucial moments, they are there. Patriarch Sabah has a long history of being there in Beit Sahur, in the first Intifada. We have seen the Costos together with Patriarch Theophilus and the Armenian Patriarch go out and speak out about radicalism on the other side. This is the first time. When it's enough, it's enough. When these church leaders go out and close the Holy Sepulchre in front of the tourists to tell Israel, you are going so far, I think you cannot really look at it that every now and then, at every small and big thing, the church should act. The church has a level of action. They have a level to communicate things, and I think they are doing their job. At looking at it, you also look at looking at our dear Father James. The Franciscans have been in the Holy Land for 800 years. They have preserved property in front of the Ottomans and in front of the Israelis and in front of everybody. Without these churches and without these clever leadership, there won't be any Christians there. I will tell you, Palestinian Christians, 1/3 of them are employed by the church and church-related organizations, mostly Catholic maybe at certain parts. But this is what the church sees things different. They run schools, they run hospitals, but at the end, when there's things that are too much, they say enough is enough, and they come out. They close churches, they do whatever is deemed necessary. But don't expect them to come out every now and then.
Well, one of the things that I think is important when we take pilgrims to the Holy Land, to go not only to the shrines, but to see places like Bethlehem University, to see places like Holy Family Hospital, to see some of the other ministries that are going on, because otherwise you could come back from your 10 to 12 days there with a very stilted image of what's going on. And I think that that's one of the things that I enjoy most. Nothing wrong with the shrines, don't get me wrong. I mean, that they're important to us, but it's also, I mean, they are places of employment for a lot of people. And I think we need to be reminded of that. I think we also need to be reminded of the value of diplomacy. It's never quick. I've never seen it. I mean, with St. Patrick's Day coming up, I'm thinking of the definition of Irish diplomacy. It's the ability to tell a man to go to you know where in such a way that he looks forward to the trip. You know, and I think that diplomacy is something that we need to support. We need to be aware of, and we need to place not too many quick expectations on.
Well, we have just a couple minutes left, so I thought maybe we could close with sort of, what advice or guidance would you have to American Catholics and really any American Christian of goodwill to support the Palestinian Christian presence and advocate for a just peace? What do you think is most important as we close out our discussion today?
Yes, I thank you for this opportunity today. This vision, I think this is worth working on, discussing. I would ask and request that CMEP, the Catholic Church, and other churches who are listening, open a discussion, discuss the matter, discuss it the way we are talking today about. I felt before 2016, before this vision, before that, I shared this vision with Patriarch Sabah, with Father David House, with others. Since then, I started talking about this to many visiting delegations and many visiting people. I think that this is something I can take to my children and say, listen, we to preserve our dignity as people and to preserve our Christian presence, we should work on this. If it takes another 50 years of nonviolent revolution, of whatever we do, we should fight to get equality on this land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. In the vision that I have seen it, maybe I see it a little bit more political than the church as a vision of children of God should be living together. I believe that we should be living together in this land. I will fight for this. I will not fight one day for a two-state solution. I will not fight one day for a 22% with settlements, without an army, without control on airspace, and say this is equality. This is two states and two peoples. No. I will not work for it. I will not give up Haifa and Shu'aib to live under occupation also in Jerusalem. I am telling my children we should fight to live equal with these people in love and in peace. If we have equality, you will feel justice, and then you will live in peace. And I have no difficulty living in peace with the Israelis, neither my children. I remember in 1995, we used to fight the Israelis by stones and rocks. The Israelis used to break our bones during the first Intifada. And once there was the smell of peace, we used to go to the Israeli jeeps with roses, with red roses in front of the jeeps to put them, because we wanted peace. We both people, we want peace because we want this land. If you love to live in this land, you want peace in this land. But it only comes with equality and justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Father Gardner, do you want to offer any closing comment?
My closing comment would be, let's get that book out there and read by more people. That's and discussed by more people.
Wonderful. And I think what you said earlier, and I think someone put it in the chat, Father Gardner, what is the Spirit saying to the church through Palestinian Christians? And how can we listen to that and receive that here as American Christians and American Catholics? So I'll show you again and encourage people to buy the book. It really is a wonderful resource. I want to really thank Yusuf for being with us on this call and for having, I think, a very important discussion. And I hope that it will prompt more discussion within the church in the United States, across both within Catholic churches, but across obviously CMEP in its ecumenical calling. So thank you all. Thank you for your wonderful questions. Thank you all for being with us today, and God bless for our Lenten journey as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank Jeff again for making this possible also.
Yes, thank you to Jeff, of course. Yes.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I will just say in closing, because Yusuf cut out a little bit in the beginning when he was speaking, please feel free, a YouTube recording of the Zoom meeting will be available on CMEP's YouTube channel afterwards with subtitles. So you can go ahead and watch again if there are parts of what he shared that you missed. I also want to share that you actually still can catch the Gaza webinar series if that's of interest to you, a 4-part series that we ran. The last session is today at 12:30 Eastern time, so just in 30 minutes here on the economics of Gaza. Also coming up on May 19th is an event called Mystagogia, What Can We Do to Build a Better Future in Palestine and Israel? And then lastly, I just want to lift up our Lenten Devotion series, which reflects on this question of, is peace possible in Israel, Palestine, and in the broader Middle East? So please use those resources, utilize them, and join us again for our next event. We would love to continue this learning